Some stories whisper from history. Death by lightning grabs you by the throat. Netflix's series immerses you in a forgotten moment, humid Washington air, tension, and desperation. It centers on President Garfield and his assassin, Charles Guiteau, two men on a collision course. Matthew Macfadyen and Michael Shannon don't just act, they embody Garfield and Guiteau. This is a story of ambition, madness, and the fragility of power. Death by lightning is more than a title. It's a metaphor for fate's violence and unpredictability. Matthew Macfadyen's Garfield is a man of quiet strength, a weary leader at the center of a storm. Michael Shannon's Guiteau is his opposite, unhinged, desperate, convinced he's a kingmaker. The genius is in the contrast. Garfield is order, Guiteau is chaos. Together they're two sides of the American coin. One the nation's best self, the other its darkest fear. Their collision is inevitable and devastating. Garfield and Guiteau's first meeting isn't grand. It's a brief, forgettable encounter in a crowded hotel lobby. Garfield, president-elect, is surrounded by well-wishers, already burdened by the office. Macfadyen plays him as polite but distant, his attention divided. Into this world steps Guiteau. Awkward, eager, clutching his speech. He pushes through, blurting out that he's responsible for Garfield's victory and expects a reward consul to Paris. Garfield gives a polite, non-committal response, a nod, a handshake, a generic thanks. For Garfield, it's one of 1,000 interactions, instantly forgotten. For Guiteau, it's everything. A handshake becomes a contract, a dismissal, a secret confirmation. This disconnect is the seed of tragedy. The show's creators film the scene from both perspectives. For Garfield, a meaningless distraction. For Guiteau, a life-altering event. Shannon's face, after Garfield moves on, is triumphant in delusion. He believes he's secured his future. One man's polite gesture is another's binding promise. And when that promise is broken, it will be paid for in blood. The tragedy grows from this moment of misunderstanding. The series captures the power of misinterpretation. Garfield barely registers Guiteau. Guiteau sees destiny. The handshake is a fuse, lit and burning. The audience knows where it leads. The tension is set. The tragedy is inevitable. To understand the tragedy, you must understand Garfield. Born in poverty, he rose to become a college president and Civil War hero. He embodied the American dream, intellect, integrity, and oratory power. But his presidency was born from conflict. The Republican Party was divided between stalwarts and half-breeds. Garfield wanted to reform the spoils system, awarding jobs by merit, not politics. This made him powerful enemies, especially Senator Roscoe Conkling. His presidency was consumed by battles over appointments, not the unity and progress he hoped for. Office seekers like Guiteau flooded his days, wearing him down. He called them a horde of vultures. Garfield's term was tragically short, just 4 months before he was shot. But he stood for principle, defying the stalwarts and asserting presidential power. He fought for a modern professional civil service. This noble cause put him in the path of a man who saw the spoils system as his ticket to greatness. Garfield was a man of the future, undone by the past. Charles Guiteau was defined by failure, a drifter, con man, and narcissist. He failed as a lawyer, was kicked out of a commune, and his newspaper flopped. Yet in his mind, he was a genius waiting for recognition. His obsession with Garfield began during the 1880 election. Guiteau switched parties, wrote a rambling speech, and convinced himself it won Garfield the presidency. He believed he was owed the consulship in Paris. In Washington, he became a constant, unnerving presence, handing out speeches, writing demanding letters, unable to grasp that no one took him seriously. To Guiteau, the job was a debt to collect, not a favor to ask. As months passed and the appointment never came, his obsession curdled into resentment. He saw Garfield's fight against the stalwarts as a personal betrayal. In his twisted logic, he believed Garfield was destroying the party. A terrible idea took root. God commanded him to remove the president. It wasn't murder, he reasoned, it was political necessity. By killing Garfield, he'd save the country and become a hero. Guiteau's delusion became deadly purpose. The failed lawyer would make history, through violence. The most powerful scene isn't the assassination, it's Garfield and Guiteau's final confrontation in the White House. By now, Guiteau is a recognized problem, barred from the building, but he slips past the guards one last time. He finds Garfield alone, weary and burdened. Macfadyen shows a man at the end of his rope, no longer a president, just a tired man seeking peace. When he sees Guiteau, his face hardens, exhaustion replaced by anger. Garfield finally confronts him, voice low and firm. "Leave. You'll never be consul to Paris." For the first time, reality pierces Guiteau's delusion. Shannon's performance is astounding. Confidence drains, replaced by wounded confusion. He sputters, insists, brings up the speech and handshake, unable to process rejection. Garfield, patience gone, turns his back. A gesture of finality. In that moment, Guiteau ceases to exist for Garfield. It's the most devastating blow to a man built on fantasy. The switch flips, confusion turns to cold certainty, the hurt becomes hate. In this scene, the murder is committed, no weapon needed. The bullet is forged in humiliation. The camera lingers on Shannon's face as Garfield walks away. We see the birth of a killer. Guiteau is no longer an office seeker, he's an instrument of retribution. If the world won't recognize his greatness, he'll force it, through violence. The collision is complete. The tragedy is set in motion. The power of death by lightning comes from a bold choice. Many intense scenes weren't fully rehearsed. Macfadyen and Shannon prepared separately, immersing themselves in their characters' minds. They saved the raw energy for the cameras, creating genuine unpredictability. When Garfield expresses frustration, it feels real. He's reacting to Shannon's chaotic energy for the first time. Shannon's Guiteau isn't a cartoon villain, he's a man with a different reality. By not over-rehearsing, Shannon taps into Guiteau's illogical leaps of thought. His performance is unsettling because it doesn't feel like acting. It feels like you're in the room with a disturbed individual. This technique is a high-wire act, requiring immense trust and skill. Macfadyen and Shannon are masters, keeping every interaction alive and dangerous. The result is a series that feels like a documentary filmed in 1881. The emotions aren't manufactured, they're discovered on camera. That's why the White House scene is so powerful. We're not watching actors, we're witnessing history's raw collision. The assassination, when it comes, is brutal and pathetic. On July 2, 1881, Guiteau shoots Garfield at a train station, then waits to be hailed as a hero. He's immediately arrested, but the nation is united in horror. Garfield lingers for 79 days, his death slow and agonizing, not from the bullet, but from infection caused by unsterilized medical care. The nation is captivated, newspapers printing daily updates, the public praying for recovery. Garfield's ordeal transforms him into a national martyr. When he dies, the country mourns deeply. Guiteau's trial is a media circus. He's delusional to the end, acting as his own lawyer, claiming to be God's agent. The jury isn't convinced. He's hanged in June 1882. But the tragedy sparks real change. Outrage over the assassination leads to the Pendleton Civil Service Reform Act in 1883. Garfield's fight for reform, denied in life, is won in death. The nation learns a hard lesson about power, entitlement, and the cost of ignoring warning signs. The legacy is lasting. History is changed by a single, overlooked man. Death by lightning is more than a history lesson. It's a mirror. It reveals the dark corners of ambition and the consequences of untreated mental illness. The people who shape history are flawed and vulnerable, just like us. The series is a moving tribute to a forgotten president. Macfadyen makes Garfield's story matter again. It's also a chilling character study. Shannon's Guiteau is unforgettable, a warning about entitlement and delusion. In a world where fame is confused with importance, Guiteau feels disturbingly modern. The emotional power comes from the collision of these two performances. It's a story about the unbridgeable gap between two realities, duty and reason versus fantasy and ego. The tragedy is that both men, in their own way, believe they're right. The show forces us to sit in the uncomfortable space between them. It's a deeply moving, unsettling experience that lingers long after the credits roll. Ultimately, Death by Lightning is a human story, about a good man who wanted to heal a nation, and a broken man who believed he needed to break it. The biggest threats often come from a single overlooked person, convinced their voice is the only one that matters.